Hey, Herrst, Alter, was ist das?
Do you speak English?
What is this? What is all this for?
Oh, this is just for Schnitz and Giggles.
Schnitz and Giggles!
Welcome to Schnitz and Giggles, the podcast that stumbles upon the humor of cross-cultural confusion and life in Vienna, Austria, through the experiences of an Auslander and his Wiener.
Brought to you by the Edelweiss Crackers.
Disclaimer. This podcast is for the purpose of entertainment only and is not a replacement for therapy.
Welcome to the next episode of Schnitz and Giggles.
Guten Hallo.
Guten Hallo. I'm Michael.
I'm Lucas.
Coming at you from Vienna. I wanted to talk to you about more stuff about living life in Vienna.
Right, and since we had so much material last time, here comes the greetings episode, part 2.
Great.
Let's jump right in. Coming back to some greetings here in Austria, have you noticed any difference in how Americans greet each other or Austrians or Europeans greet each other?
Yes.
Thank you. Next question.
Good.
Moving on.
Wow, good combo. Well, certainly I think Americans are more likely to greet strangers, just kind of in a passive way.
Right.
Just like a, hey, what's up? Raised eyebrows, one raised finger as you're driving.
On the steering wheel.
You have your hand on the steering wheel and you just kind of raise one finger. And then the person in the car coming your way also raises their finger.
But if they raise two fingers, is that too friendly or?
It depends on the finger.
Okay.
Yeah, if you raise two fingers, you're trying to be extra friendly, I suppose.
Okay.
But I mean, what do you? I feel like you're baiting me into something. So what are you trying to get me to answer?
I'm not trying to set any traps here. I think
Okay.
it's really more if you felt like you were gonna say hello to someone here in Austria and you're going for a hug and the other person just is going for a handshake, and that is sort of those awkward moments.
Yeah, greetings can present the most awkward of awkward moments for sure. You
Right.
go in for a handshake and somebody else is going fist bump.
You break your
Or vice versa. I always like to go for a handshake when somebody fist bumps. Shake their
shake their fist.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's bad if you go for a hug and they go for a fist bump, then you have the fist in
then
your
you
stomach.
gotta fight. Yeah.
Or what's happened to me as well multiple times, and maybe it has happened to you as well, if you kind of notice, okay, they're leaning in for a hug,
Sure.
but then they're really going for the kissy thing.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
the other,
that is-
you go for the kissy thing, and they were just
It's just a hug.
it's just a hug,
Yeah.
which is the side
Yeah,
hug.
because I guess over here, I mean, specifically in Austria, but probably throughout Europe, the cheek kiss is a greeting for people who are familiar with one another.
Right.
Not too familiar, but just, are friends.
It certainly expresses a sense of closeness, of trust.
Is the kissy here in Austria like something that's been around for a really long time?
No,
Like it's something that goes back to the emperor's days that he mandated that everybody greet each other with a kiss?
no, that's not the emperor's demands or anything.
Okay.
This is a fairly recent thing, and that I think it was maybe the 1970s or 80s where this became more and more, let's say, standard. Maybe it's not the right word, but maybe it's more a standard greeting by now. Yes, but before,
That recent, huh?
so the one or two generations before us,
Darn boomers.
the boomers,
Kissing each other all over the place.
thinking of the older generation in my life, it was always a firm handshake, maybe,
Sure.
or perhaps just a hug. But
Although I've found that the hugs amongst Austrians are usually not, like, you're more likely to get the kissy as opposed to like a hug.
yeah, that might be true.
I think, us Americans, we're all about hugging. We'll greet each other with a hug.
And less kissy, or
Less kissy.
Yeah,
A lot less
that's-
kissy. Yeah. But I've found that sometimes they like greeting with a hug, unless that's kind of a normal part of your relationship, I guess. Like, the guys on the team will come in the dugout, we'll give a hug, whatever. But just like an Austrian friend who's not a baseball player is probably not gonna go in for the hug.
gonna hug you,
Yeah, the bro hug.
bro hug.
It's a nice firm pat on the back.
Yeah, do you do that amongst all baseball players on the team, or
Yeah, I think it's pretty common. Like, especially before a game or a practice, when you're seeing the guy, you give a nice hug. Yeah, we're teammates, we're brothers.
yeah?
Say hello in more of a way than a formal handshake.
I'm not sure if the Austrians do quite exactly the same, especially thinking of sports athletes. Unless it's, if it's an American sport, they might have taken over that tradition even from the American
Maybe.
team spirit.
But the kissy is always awkward to remember, like, which side of the face is the first side on the kissy. Because
If you do that wrong, you start
yeah,
kissing
if you
each
go
other's
in
nose.
opposite, then
Yeah.
it's no longer just a friendly greeting amongst friends. It's a very intimate greeting.
Yeah. I looked this up before and I found some numbers. So most of the people who are doing the kissy greeting are 30 to 49-year-olds. 58%.
So
do that.
firmly in our generation, or we are firmly in that generation.
But there are 16% that a number found that even think it's awkward or it's unnecessary or it's too much. So 16% of people in Austria disapprove of these kind of greetings.
And to be fair, most of the time, we say kissy kissy, but it's really cheeky cheeky.
Mm-hmm, right.
It's really cheek to cheek. Most greetings, right? Like
the lips don't really.
Yeah, lips aren't contacting.
Don't even touch anything.
Cheek or anything.
And in German, it's called Bussi.
Bussi.
Yeah, so Bussi.
Bussi.
I don't know if they have this term in English, but there's something we call Bussi Gesellschaft, which Gesellschaft means society.
We don't have that in English.
Yeah, we don't have Gesellschaft. So you should take up some good German words. So when we refer to as the Kissy Society, they mean a certain group of people that are all, maybe are a little bit more arrogant and more hard to describe. It's
upper crust.
Yeah, upper crust.
Or trying to act.
Or even
fancier.
trying to act fancier than they are, perhaps.
Yeah.
Some people feel that's not really.
You think that's why 40, 50 years ago, it was just this resurgence of this kind of people wanting to have a high society indicator that we greet people with a kissy kissy because we're fancy?
I think in a way, this would go for all cultures, all countries. If you are doing something that you say you've brought from a different culture.
Yeah.
That makes you look really, really sophisticated or perhaps even exotic.
Yeah.
And I think the French people, for example, I think they've been doing it way longer than the Austrians or Germans have.
Sure.
So, coming into a meeting or just meeting some friends, and suddenly you're so educated, sophisticated, and you do the things that the French people do, you may appear much more bigger or more special than you actually are. So I think that might have had something to do with it. So to do something that no one else has been doing.
All right.
And therefore you kind of set yourself apart and you look a little bit better.
Yeah.
So that might have had a role in it. But I don't really know much about these things.
We have to find somebody amongst that generation that helped invent it.
We have to find a kissologist.
Yeah.
If a like that exists.
A kissy kissy expert.
A kissy kissy expert.
So if any of you out there know a kissy kissy expert on greetings, only on greetings.
Greetings.
Just to be clear. Have them call in. Phone lines are open, man.
Yeah. But the one thing that we have to acknowledge is that kissy-kissy versus handshakes, when it comes to personal hygiene, the kissy-kissy wins. There are less bacteria being transferred.
Sure, yeah, your hands are probably dirtier than your cheek.
Because you touch more with your hands than you touch with your cheeks, so your cheeks carry less.
Pretty presumptuous of you, but yeah.
You don't know what I do with my cheeks.
Well, yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right now that I think about it.
I mean, do you rub your face on the walls and everywhere you go and trees and it's
the fancy strikes you, I guess.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what I do to appear very fancy.
Yeah, I think we could start a new thing.
Oh, yes, that's great.
Turn the pages of my book with my cheek.
Yeah.
It's too bad this isn't a video podcast. It'd be much funnier right now.
Imagine cooking with your face.
Yeah. Hot pad holders for the face. Yeah. Just a big mask.
Great.
I do know that there is obviously there are more formal ways and less formal ways to greet somebody. Just like the servus is probably going to be something that's less formal. I get kind of so used to saying that I start even saying it in the grocery store, which is probably not necessarily the most appropriate place to greet the cashier or whatever with a servus. Are there other ways or words that we should be using in more formal versus, if we're greeting a stranger for the first time as opposed to a friend? Well,
that's a big topic since you just opened up another big box in the German language.
Here we go.
If you've never taken any German lessons so far, you might not be aware of this, but most people are aware once they have their even first couple German lessons that there are two ways of saying you in German. Actually, there are three ways.
Yes, we do.
Do you? So the you, there's an informal you, and there's a plural you, and there's a formal you. And so the du is the informal and the sie is the formal. So there are certain situations with certain people that you would pick one or the other.
But this is probably more like in the conversation just after the initial greeting, right?
Yes. However, some greetings would only work in a formal way and some only in an informal way. So if, like you just said, the servus is very informal.
Yeah. You imply the du with the servus.
The servus implies a du.
Yeah.
The grüß Gott implies a sie, and the guten Tag also. So if you want to be on a safe side, go with the guten Tag and grüß Gott. to not cause any awkward situations.
Sure. It's always good to err on the side of formality.
Often it's the better choice if you're insecure about the social situation there.
Yeah.
So I'd say this is one thing. If you say hello, just a regular hello, I think in English it would be okay to say hello, Mr. So-and-so, and hello, Mrs.
Yeah.
In German, if you say hello, Herr or Frau, that already makes it a little bit awkward.
Yeah, you've kind of imbalanced the formal and informal.
Mm-hmm. That's what I would say. Watch out for those. And if you were studying greetings, if you're memorizing vocabulary, maybe also memorize along with it when to use
situations. Yeah,
situations you would use them in. Children, for example, amongst each other, they would use all these Hallo and Servus. But if two adults meet, or even if a child is supposed to address an adult, if they're a stranger or a position of authority, then you would use the Sie.
It always. What about like? Oh, okay, talking. What about going the other way? Like for like an elderly person greeting a younger person, is that still a formal situation? Or are they going informal to prove their authority?
Authority. They would most likely use the du with talking to children.
Yeah.
And if they use the Sie, it would also carry a special sense of awkwardness. Well, you could use, and that goes both ways, you can use those formal, informal words and greetings in a sarcastic way and in a funny way.
Yeah.
So if you and your friends hang out and you're just super informal and another friend comes in and says, Grüß Gott.
Yeah.
It's just, it's just
just
practically just over the top.
Yeah,
it's overly formal and doesn't really mean that. So if an adult addresses a child with Sie or the formal one, it might also carry either some irony or sarcasm with it.
But would a teacher walk into a classroom and say Servus to their students?
Only the cool teachers might.
Only the cool teachers, yeah.
So meaning I don't do that.
Yeah, you say Guten Hallo to them.
Guten Hallo, yeah, teaching all the wrong things.
Great chaos.
Great chaos. No, teacher-student relationship is a very specific one, a very interesting one. Also, that has changed over the years. For example, in elementary school, they used to call the teacher, for example, I called my teacher Frau Lehrerin, so, which literally translates as Mrs. Teacher.
Mrs. Teacher, yeah.
You would rarely call them by the last name. As in the States, you probably say
Miss, that's automatic.
Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Miller. Yeah. When it comes to the secondary level education, you would usually address them with, first of all, you would say Mr. or Mrs. Professor. So you have Professor, Frau Professor. That often is enough.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll add their last name. And it would be a Sie situation. The teacher, however, would say du to the students for most of the time. With elementary students, often they cannot recognize the nuances of, okay, when do I say du or Sie? Or even kids, even native speakers take a long time learning the ways of dealing with this properly. An elementary teacher might tolerate kids says du to her. And so sometimes they would now call her Mrs. Teacher, but now with the first name instead, not the last name. So it would be Mrs. Teacher Hannah or Mrs. Teacher, any first name. What happened to me back in the day, I had a teacher who was really old, put it this way, and old-fashioned. Yeah. And a very proper teacher. He was very competent in what he was doing, but he was really one of the last of his kind. I mean, say I don't think it's happening anymore these days. But back when I was a student, when we changed from middle school to high school, he told us, okay, now you're becoming adults here in high school. So therefore, from now on, I'm going to address you in a formal way. So he used to address it with du before, and then he switched to the Sie, which is unusual because usually when you switch, you only switch the other way around. You start formal, and then you go informal. Yeah. So you go from Sie to du. But he, in a way, he kind of wanted to express his respect for us as students, and it is taken us seriously. Although he kind of also created more distance in a social way. Right. So that was a little bit awkward, but he did it with everyone, like everybody, all the students who were kind of advancing in the years.
Yeah, it's wild the amount of like social nuance that's built into language that it goes far beyond communication, but it's also establishing like social hierarchy and how you interact with somebody, just with the word choices.
Yes. And you can get into some trouble without even knowing. Since if a student, for example, addresses the teacher the wrong way, that might have some
it might be on the bad list for the
you might go to the principal
the rest of the year.
For saying it, and that's especially hard if you're just a language learner.
Yeah,
I mean, often, especially in a school setting, teachers would acknowledge, okay, he or she is still learning the language and they would not really take it seriously. But imagine you are in a situation where you get in touch with the police and you start addressing the police officer with a du.
Yeah.
That would be inappropriate as well culturally. That might be a very complicated situation. However, when we talk about the police would sometimes, when they talk to people who are not from around, if they're immigrants, they would often even themselves call the other person by du, by the informal way.
Super informal.
But not even to discriminate or to put them in a bad light or bad position. But they know that most immigrants, they only can handle the du version.
Yeah.
And if they address them with sie, which can also mean she, for example, the word sie can also mean she, they might, like the language learner, the immigrant might not even, they think they'll talk about she, they could talk about her, not talking about you, and they might misunderstand.
Yeah.
So even in that situation, there's so many different scenarios you can think of.
Sure.
It can go all wrong, or it can actually work out for the better when you switch back and forth.
I've seen that happen in times when native German speakers are kind of self-translating into English. Mm-hmm. And they'll refer to a male in the story as she, just because that's like what's going on in the head, right? Like there's that direct translation to things. And obviously, if you're not as comfortable in the other language, then you end up being even more offensive while you are trying to be, formal and polite.
Right. Yeah. Those pronouns are really tricky because the word sie can mean three things.
Yeah.
It's the formal you. It can be she, but it also mean they.
Yeah.
That's with all the genders in the German language as well. That can be confusing, no matter if you're learning English or if you're learning German, but you want to translate.
Right.
You can pretty quickly get
yourself into trouble.
Get yourself into trouble.
Yeah. Interesting, the school dynamic of it, having worked at the international school, just the different backgrounds of kids that are coming in and how they're, maybe what their home culture teaches them how to interact with instructors. Mm-hmm. You get this wide range of, the overly polite sir on everything, or the mister, or, people, they would just run this whole. So I could see that there were some teachers that would get offended at times. Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes, being called sir,
they got offended because
you get offended by that because it's like, whoa, this is way too formal for what I'm comfortable with in a small classroom setting. Mm-hmm. And so it's such a minefield. Yeah, how dare you treat me with respect?
Come on,
ugh.
You can do better than that.
Yeah, you can
try again.
Yeah, language is fun. Yeah, there's so many ways we can offend people on accident.
On accident. Yeah.
If you're not good enough offending people on purpose,
then you go
move to a different country. You can start offending people on accident. Well, you were telling me about a letter. As we talk even of how people can use the formalities in a more ironic or offensive tone on purpose.
Yes, and here's now a special course. This is now a special treat for everyone listening to this episode here.
All right.
You're going to learn something you probably wouldn't learn in a language course learning German. The way that this formal, informal structure is working out for a lot of people is that the formal, the Sie, it creates some distance. Yeah. And it makes you feel, or it makes you look very...
Create some superiority.
In a way. So what happens, before I get into that letter, for example, what might happen in other moments when you are talking to someone in an informal way, you're talking to du with each other, and there might be some conflict, what has happened before in history a couple times. It doesn't happen very often, but people would sometimes say, I withdraw my du. I take it back.
You have to formally withdraw.
You have to formally withdraw it. And now we're just addressing each other by last name only and with a Z.
The bureaucracy of this part of the world, man. Is there a stamp you have to get for that, or is it just a verbal withdrawal?
It's usually a verbal withdrawal.
Okay, all right.
On the other hand, we should maybe also talk about this. The good part is sometimes when two people meet on a formal level, like we just said before, they meet and they talk Z to each other by last name. Sometimes they feel, okay, we're getting closer. We could be friends.
Yeah.
So they say, it's usually the older one initiates that, not the younger one. The older says, or the one with a higher superiority, any kind of status would say, okay, let's say du. And often in Austria, it also connects with a drink.
Of course.
You post each other, you have a glass, and then you say, hey, ich bin der Herbert. Yeah, my name is Herbert now. Or,
so that's when you know, once you get the first name.
Yeah. So I'm not Herbert Huber anymore. I'm not Mr. Huber to you, but I'm actually Herbert now. So I say, hey, ich bin der Herbert, and then say, ich bin der Andreas, So from then on they talk du with each other.
Yeah, I suppose that's that's a helpful social standard to have, you know, to know when you're going to be friends.
Yeah, so if someone comes up to you and clinks the glass up to you and says, hey, ich bin Peter, something, like, okay, I knew that before, so why are you telling me this?
Yeah, thanks.
They're
I know your name.
They're actually telling you, hey, we're good by first.
Oh, now we're friends, huh?
We're friends now.
Man, I thought we were friends the whole time. That's tough.
That's misleading.
Yeah.
You can't be a friend with an Austrian as easily as that.
That's very true. That's very true.
So, and then the other hand, if those two friends start fighting or have some conflict, the one might say to the other, okay, I withdraw the do. And so I will call you Z.
No longer friends.
We're no longer friends. I mean, they might still be working with each other or you're dealing with each other.
We're only colleagues now.
Just in a distant relationship. So you can express so much with talking Z. So as I was saying, you can create some distance just by using these pronouns, which is fascinating. And the one thing I was going to refer to, there's this letter that was written a couple years ago. When was it? 2020. It's not so long ago. There was a mayor.
2020, yeah, that's...
I mean, it feels like ages ago.
It does feel like ages ago. Wow.
There is this mayor in this small town somewhere in Austria. And there was this other from the opposing party, another guy who was kind of a veteran. So that he was even the older generation. Like so this the mayor writing the older guy. And the email, which is funny to begin with, the subject line is your email. But in English, you don't see the difference. But in German, you see the difference if it's your or your. So the formal your. So it actually says dein Mail, which is the informal.
Okay,
so your email, it's like a do-based email.
Yeah.
But then the email comes from the mayor, and it starts off with Herr geehrter Herr Ingenieur Schneider. Yeah. So that's sehr geehrter Herr Ingenieur Schneider. So sehr geehrt means that's how you start a letter.
Yeah.
It really means literally, dear highly honored Mr. So-and-so.
Yeah.
So it's a very formal letter. And then the first question is in the letter, since when are we saying do to each other? This is the first question. And then he says...
So the other guy had sent an email...
Obviously to the mayor.
To the mayor that
using do.
Email.
Yeah. And
with do.
Yeah. And then something with... It was referring to some other email that has been sent before. But obviously there was a do.
So the younger mayor.
The younger mayor, but the older politician. The older politician had sent the younger mayor a do email.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So in most settings, that would be permission to be informal.
And even especially, like I said before, with the older guy having the rights to even say, it's actually an honor if an older person tells you, let's call me do.
Yeah, it would have been culturally known that this was an offer.
But these two people obviously had a fight. The ironic thing, they had a fight over the local morgue.
Okay.
For some reason. And so the mayor is writing bad. So he's writing back and saying, okay, from now on, you either call me by my last name or you call me Mr. Mayor, but nothing else is permitted. And the funniest thing in it all is he's really trying to make the other politician look really bad.
Okay.
He's basically saying how bad he was as a politician back when he was still had a higher position or something. But in the end, he says, I want to state one fact. It says here, you were, it's like the you, that's the former you. Yeah. You are and you will always be a swine.
Oh.
A pig.
Wow.
And then he signs his office letter with the German word is hochachtungsvoll, which is a very nice word. Instead of sincerely, in German you actually state with highest regards. I mean, maybe you also say that in English sometimes. Sure. Like with the highest regards, then Mayor so-and-so is signing off. So the funny thing is, he's destroying this other guy. He's just using really foul language.
Yeah, but in a formal way.
But all the time he's keeping it very, very formal and very proper.
Yeah.
So you don't know what to do with that. But that's how you can have fights in German.
Yeah.
With at the same time being so distant and so proper while saying the ugliest things to each other.
Do you think it's the distance that made him feel more comfortable writing in such a nasty way?
In a way, I think it's a similar effect that you see online, maybe on social media and any comment sections. When people feel they're farther away from whatever is commented, they tend to be a little more nasty than in real life. They don't
be true.
So it is you really hold back more in a way. Maybe when you feel closer and if you feel more distant, you feel you have the right, or that you have at least the option to say things you probably wouldn't say. Because he's saying in his email, I mean, I skipped that. He's saying, with all due respect, sir, you are a beep hole.
Yeah.
So with all due respect, you are... the worst.
Yeah, well, when you put in with all due respect before you say something mean, that's
even in English a term where you say, okay, there's nothing good coming after that.
Yeah, no, nothing good coming out of with all due respect.
Yes, but like in German, the formality is just so much more evident.
Yeah, it becomes very obvious when it's in the written form as well, right?
Right.
You see exactly how he's establishing the social distance.
Yeah. And the problem is, of course, the mayor didn't think this through because the politician forwarded an email to the local newspaper. It was on the news, even not just in the local news, but even, I think went all through Austria.
Scandal.
It's a big scandal, and then he got into trouble. And I think he had to apologize publicly. And I don't know what these two men are.
How did the apology look?
It's a formal apology.
Was it very formal?
Yeah. But I mean, he wrote things like he said, like, our morgue is working really well. Don't worry, you'll soon figure out. You'll soon experience it yourself how good our freezer is, and these things like for corpses.
Politics, man.
Yeah,
it's nasty in every culture.
I have no idea if this guy was even sober when he wrote this. This might be another thing.
Well,
there's so many unknowns to this game.
Wow. So hopefully that clarified some things for you, listener, of how to greet people on the streets and how to greet your friends. Maybe how to not greet people as well. Mm-hmm. How to pull people down in a very formal way. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. Be nice.
You have to have a high level of language abilities to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, no kidding.
But for now, formally or informally, correctly or incorrectly, I think there's only one thing for us left to say, which is
Guten bye-bye.
Guten bye-bye then. Thanks for listening to this Schnitz and Giggles episode.
Remember to follow and subscribe if you want more content like this from the Adel Wisecrackers.
Don't be shy about commenting or leaving feedback. Until next time.
So long.
Farewell.
Good Wiedersehen.
Bye-bye.